We're gonna have now a discussion brought by Imported Projects, a special discussion with Tim Pritlove from Chaos Computer Club, the artist Harm van den Doppel, NADIM SAMMAN, one of the directors of Imported Projects. And the theme is Beyond Cooperative Social Media, Critical and Creative Strategies. So please enjoy.
Thank you very much, Rika. Thanks, Rika, for organizing today. So I'd just like to say a few more words about the focus of this discussion. We've seen presentations today by artists who are engaged with Facebook and Twitter in various respects. A lot of those works have to do with content that is being either uploaded to those platforms or work that, as it were, responds to typical modes of communication through those media. But we want to ask, or we want to focus in a different direction. Today, more people are online than ever before. However, the majority conduct almost all their activities through these corporate controlled platforms. In the field of social media, user expression and creative production of virtual personas are celebrated in our popular culture. However, the new self and other constructions are mediated by system architectures that are geared towards data harvesting and bespoke advertising. The benefits of connecting with friends and a wider social group through popular platforms are also offset by similar compromises to personal liberty. So, we want to ask, is there another possible future for social media? What alternative architectures are currently being explored by artists, programmers and developers? And most importantly, what creative directions are worth pursuing? To do that, we've invited two very distinguished and interesting speakers. The first being Tim Pritlove. Tim studied computer science, and from 1998 to 2005, he was the main organizer of the Chaos Communication Congress and the Chaos Communication Camps. Also, until 2006, he was the managing director of the Chaos Computer Club, of which he is, of course, still a member. The Chaos Computer Club is a well-known organization in Berlin and internationally. They are a campaigning group and also a group for the development of new approaches to digital technology and software. Harm van den Doppel is a Dutch artist, and as far as I understand it, your work emerges from a continuous dialogue and exchange with the participatory culture of the internet, encompassing websites, video collage and sculptures that meld physical and virtual realms. Harm's work has been shown in various museums and galleries worldwide, including the New Museum in New York, the Netherlands Institute for Media Kunst, Spencer Brownstone Gallery in New York, the Atelier Hofkreuzberg, and various others. So I'd like to first invite Harm to make a short presentation of some online content that might lead us into the discussion. I'm interested in particular in how your own development and engagement with what's known as the surf club format. I want to know what a surf club is and how it constitutes a communal creative enterprise, and then maybe after that we can go on to talk about other communal creative enterprises.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm Harm van den Doppel. I live in Berlin, I'm from Holland. Before studying arts, I studied computer science, in particular artificial intelligence, which is to many people really something different, but to me it was always sort of mixed. I've been online, making art online since 2005, 2006. At that time I just graduated and there were no venues interested in my art, no museum, there was no connection to an art world. I hardly actually knew of such a thing, so it was really natural for us to, with other people that I only knew online, to publish work online. That happened in surf clubs. I can show a few. It's all kind of old. It's been a thing of 2007, 2008. There is some surf clubs now, but they're not as active as it was back then. I can show you Spirit Service. It's not really active anymore. Well, actually, this is not that old. I haven't been really active on it, and I guess one of the interesting things of it was that the people on these surf clubs didn't know each other from the real world, but then gradually started meeting each other. And every post on the side would often have a follow-up post that was sort of reacting to it. It was original content or remixing content. There was no explanation or framing. It was somehow also a kind of introvert thing for a group of friends, but it gained more attention. Spirit Service was one that gained some momentum. Another one, maybe that was the mother of the surf club, was Nasty Nets. Which is also, well, this is from February, but this started in August 2006. And what was nice that gradually the people who only met online and almost had a certain opposition towards exhibiting in the institutionalized art world got some attention from this art world, and then gradually moved away from the browser experience into the exhibition space. A lot of people call this move the so-called post-internet thing. It had a lot to do with memes, I guess. You're probably all familiar with this kind of imagery. Another one was Super Central. Started by Charles Buskowski, a friend of mine. And I think I'm showing this because gradually this posting of material is taken over by Facebook. You see more people putting stuff online, not necessarily calling themselves artists, but putting things on their wall, and this is sort of a predecessor of that, I guess. I like to show another network that I made myself, and it's not really social because I'm the only one on it, so it's a one-person social network. I found it interesting to post content and my artwork online, but I didn't really want to make a portfolio site, but I was more interested in to see how I could have an artist practice represented online, but not necessarily taking that art practice and putting it online, but also see how that art practice develops and changes because of the availability online, and how, especially how different pieces relate to each other in other ways than a linear structure. Like if you go to YouTube, you see a movie, there's always related movies, and there's no begin and end to YouTube. It's a big cloud of data. So I made a website called Dissociations, and it has my work on it, but not in a linear structure, but every time one thing is presented along a few other works or texts or sound that are associatively related. There's no tagging, because that would impose a certain ontology on it or a certain interpretation. Instead, it's trained, and it has some intelligence. It's not rocket science, but it has some interesting things to it. It's almost like a game. I do this on the bus stops, or to train the system to make it more adequate. So every time I'm presented with 3 randomly picked items in the system, I call them attempts, and I get to click which one does not belong to the series, which is a very art school thing to do. You put your things on the table, and then you see what it is about by looking what does not belong in this series. So there's an associative structure, an associative criterion, but there's no interpretation or explanation. So whenever I have some time next to checking my mail, I sometimes train this system. So in this case, I think somehow this one does not belong there, and I click it, and then the system comes up with a different set of that. And I've been doing that thousands of times, and from that sort of rhizome structure emerged with things that are related to other things. And it generates these pages. And the links make sense to me in some way, on an intuitive level. I can't always explain why things belong together, because I would do that in language, and then I would be starting with tag clouds or that kind of stuff, and I didn't really want that. So this collage is somehow related to this one, and this text that I wrote in the same time, and then I can click a sculpture, and then it will give me an overview of other sculptures that are somehow related, but also things that are not sculptures but are related content-wise or in other possible connections. That would be my introduction of that. Yeah.
Thanks. Thanks, Han. So at the beginning of Hans' presentation, I introduced the idea of a surf club and a collaboration between various individuals to form a kind of visual dialogue in the manner, that's reminiscent of, let's say, a stream of Facebook wall posts. So it's clear that you're interested in collaboration and social creativity enabled by digital technologies. I'd like to ask you, Tim, what your attitude is to sort of social creative collaboration, and specifically I'd like to get your take on the corporate platforms that are available today.
So what's the question?
I guess as a representative of the CCC, we understand that you're leading, sort of your organisation is leading the debate about sort of non-corporate futures for the internet. You're interested in protecting privacy and freedom. So I'd like to know how your organisation sort of sees itself in relation to the alternative, which is perhaps a kind of more corporate structured user experience.
Well, first of all, it's important to understand that CCC isn't really, it's not really easy to say like the CCC stands for this and that, because it's many people are into that organization, and you probably get 5 different opinions from 4 members at any given time, including myself. So it really depends. But you're right. One of the focuses of the CCC has been always on, I'd say, the independence of the individual within the network and the openness of the networks. And it might lead to the view that it's sort of anti-corporatism or something like this, although I wouldn't really come up with that term in that case. It's a phenomenon that the really important systems of the last few years were basically all company-based. But there are others that are still around that probably people do not talk so much about, like the Java internet service, which is a totally open, non-central chatting service that's just there. It's just nobody really talks about it that much, and it's probably not easy to characterize it as a social service as such. So, of course, other platforms are more important. I mean, we're talking about art now, right?
Amongst other things.
Sorry?
And all the issues, art doesn't exist in a vacuum, it exists in a social sphere.
Yeah, I don't really know how to approach that from here now. So maybe let me tell you a bit my experience with communities and art in this particular constellation of the CCC. Some of you might remember an installation we did more or less 11 years ago called Blinken Lights. Who has heard of Blinken Lights? Do I need to explain this? Yeah, I need to explain this. So, not far from here, Haus des Lehrers, Alexanderplatz, we got our hands on that building. It's Blinken Lights, B-L-I-N-K-E-N. Right, Blinken Lights. First thing. And so we had the opportunity to invade that empty building and turn it into a huge computer screen, which came to a surprise for many people. You can see that here at the picture at the top. And this, we'll go, that's it. And everybody was quite surprised that this was happening. And the way we approached it was from a technological standpoint. So we said, like, okay, let's turn this building into a computer screen, but then it has to be alive and then it has to go on itself. So we decided to open it up from the beginning. And this is something that's sort of in the core of the CCC or the general internet movement, that you understand anything you do more as providing a platform, providing a network, providing an operating system to the people, and then you find a way how to participate everybody into this. In this particular case, what we did was, first of all, we had a game running, so you could just take your mobile phone and call it a number and play Pong on this screen, which was, for us it was totally natural, but many people were totally surprised by this, that this was possible and actually working. We also defined a data format, so we said like, here you can just take your favorite text editor, even if it's Microsoft Word, and you can make your own movies and send it in and be a part of the ever-going queue of new movies and animations running on this building. And this was sort of running from day zero, because people immediately grasped the notion of how they can be a part of this, and sent in movies and played the game. And from then on, there was really a point of where we saw that we're going to have to give it away. We no longer owned this building. When people came to us and said like, yeah, here I made a movie for my girlfriend, could you please show it tomorrow at 6 or something like this? Which of course the software wasn't really prepared for. So what we did was we combined the telephone interface and the movie interface, so people could call the building, hit in their code, and then make their movie run at that very moment. So in a way, we turned the building into an instant movie theater for everybody. And this was really, really popular, because they could just go there to the Alexanderplatz, call the building, and then it was showing their love letter, as we call it. And that was really interesting to see that it worked much better when you were integrating people from the beginning and continue to do this. Of course, there wasn't really the time of Twitter and Facebook. 11 years from now, it was a news that we had a website for this project. Imagine that. Yeah, that's how I came into play into art, because then everybody called us artists, and we always said like, no, we're not artists, we're hackers, you know. But yes, but how can you come up with such an idea? Such a marvelous idea, how can you come up with such an idea? We were standing there and saying like, how can you not come up with this idea? It's totally obvious. So coming to the point where you have the obviousness of technology encountering the non-obviousness of the general society, and I'd say today that's the feeling we get when we look at social media, that this has become normal somehow. I know this wasn't really an answer to your question, but maybe it's a good start to work from. So this corporate holdout, how did you say? Did you say anything? Did you call it somehow? I don't know.
Well, what's interesting about one of the things you were saying was you were emphasizing interactivity and this kind of the openness for people to sort of upload their own content, as it were, onto the platform. And of course, that's the big mantra for Facebook and Tumblr and all of that today. So, how, to what extent, are we all kind of convinced that we have such freedom to express ourselves? And how can art kind of work beyond these platforms, let's say? Because it's all very well uploading your pictures onto Facebook, or your paintings, or even content you've taken from Google image search onto Tumblr. But you're kind of put in a frame, you're put in a box. As an artist, for example, are you engaged in trying to make new platforms as well, or are you happy to work with the existing, let's say, consumer platforms that are available?
Well, I wasn't, because that's why I made that system that I showed. I needed more control in what it looked like, and also there's no such thing as an associated network in Facebook. It is tightly integrated though with Facebook and other technologies to make people actually see it.
You made your own operating system.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, or like a paperless studio. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the important part. That's the important part in, probably not in general for art, because if you just need to have it published on the net, you can take whatever you want. But if you really want to have interactivity, you shouldn't limit yourself to the functionality of any given network. Except it's a very, very, very general thing, like email or the aforementioned chat services and so on. So if you tap into the open standards of the internet, there's a lot more you can do, although there's also a lot more you have to do in order to achieve this. And very interesting to follow the development of this new media art scene, however you want to call it, that somehow made an interesting distinction between artists on the one hand and programmers and technologists or whatever on the other hand, which I've always considered to be the same craftsmanship in a way. Every programmer is an artist. If you're really good in programming, you are an artist, because otherwise you just can't understand what's going on. It's the very same creative process, and I've always wondered why artists or people who call themselves media artists are looking for programmers to implement their work or their thoughts. That's crazy in a way. So I think we're on a good path here, and somehow still underdeveloped territory. We're still at the beginning of this, where we'll see that the platforms themselves are going to be the core of whatever an artist wants to create.
Yeah, I love programming, and I have a background in that, but I'm also thinking that if I wouldn't have had it, and I would have still had the same interests, and I would have a budget, then I would also have been fine with having a developer make it for me. There's also lots of sculptors who don't execute their own sculptures, and I do think that they have really made the sculpture, even though they didn't physically made it. So I don't know if that is like really necessary to do it yourself. I like the attitude though of making it yourself, and I stumble upon a lot of possibilities while developing. So in that sense, I might never have come up with the system if I hadn't programmed it myself. But I don't take the legitimacy of the project there because I made it myself. Yeah.
And do you locate it in that sense? Sorry, and would you agree with Ham, or do you think?
Well, that's. I mean, you can see it that way, of course. I mean, I'm not saying every artist has to program. It's just I found an interesting disconnect in many artists because they didn't really understand what the programmer was doing. If it's just okay, I don't have time for this, I want to concentrate on this part, you do the programming, that's fine. As long as you understand what the process involves. I mean, even if you're not programming, you need to understand programming as a general concept, so that you know your options and that you understand the system. Because otherwise, if you're coming to the point of interaction, and you really want to have people sort of embedded into your art, how can you do this if you do not understand the mechanics? Can you do this if you do not understand how it works, what the implications are, what the problems are, what the dimensions, the possible outcome of this?
Isn't it also the case that the systems can actually shape the content, or as it were, they can limit your options of what content you can produce?
Yeah, especially if you look at Facebook, and for instance, I mean, that's definitely a system that can limit your options.
And you feel you would take that view home?
About Facebook?
Well, we spoke earlier about your preference for Facebook over MySpace, and you said the creativity, let's say, that was available on MySpace made things a bit more messy, more difficult.
MySpace became unworkable, I think. Yeah. That was also really charming. But I like Facebook for its being, well, it looks clean, but you have no clue what's going on behind in the background, and you also can't shape it in terms of filter bubble. And well, there was this example on TED Talk, probably a lot of people know about it, that there was a speaker and he said, I'm a Democrat and I want to know what the Republicans are thinking about certain issues, but if I want to follow them on Facebook, I have to say that I like them. But I don't like them, I just want to know their opinion. And also, if you don't like them, and you only like your own cattle, then you will not encounter the things in your wall that are actually relevant to you, but are opposing views. So that is, that's problematic, I guess. Yeah.
Facebook is the good example of it. I mean, Facebook in a way has been there before. It's called AOL, America Online. That was more or less the first. Okay, you don't have to know anything about how the internet works. Here is just your portal, and then you enter, and then you are into the internet. That was what AOL was saying. That's what Facebook is saying right now. And there's huge demand for such a system because the internet is too complicated still. In that sense, it's fine. But once you make everything you do based on such a system, you are within the limits of such a system. And somehow I understand Facebook more as a prototype for what the internet should become in the future somehow. And it's interesting to see that there are a couple of companies who have sort of previewed what the internet needs by creating an interesting product, and most recently it was the social media stuff. I mean, Twitter in a way was so successful because now we know that microblogging is something we really, really want to do, and that the follower model is a fantastic idea. And it's not that Twitter was coming up with all those ideas in the first place. I mean, they had a totally different view on what Twitter was, and it's just the users made it into what it is today. They came up with the @username notation. They came up with mentions. They came up with retweets. They came up with basically everything that makes Twitter an interesting service today. And now they're starting to get creepy, you know, and Twitter is now sort of reducing everything you can do with it, especially, which was the big advantage, the API. So now people are looking for alternatives, and I'm pretty sure these alternatives are going to come. Yeah, and Facebook is sort of still not there yet, that people want to go away. Yeah.
We mentioned the other day you were talking about you use Facebook as a way to direct traffic to your work and your website in various ways, and you were talking about some of the benefits of that and some of the limitations that you've experienced.
Yeah, I'm an artist and I want people to see my work, so and also people express the desire that if I have a show that I tell them. So that basic need is accommodated by Facebook. Yeah, and I don't remember what
we were talking about. That you have an open studio, a virtual studio. The work that only exists in an online space, that changes in time, and the kind of the filter mechanisms, for content as well. Breasts, I believe you mentioned.
Really? Well, you're referring to the system that I showed earlier, and that accommodates my desire to make a system that has a primal sense of intelligence. I don't actually believe in artificial intelligence anymore, I think, but at least it helps me to structure my practice in a way that I'm not making lists of this is what I've done, this is what my work is, but it makes pages for me. So that is something. Well, I couldn't find that on another.
You said before people don't visit websites anymore. They get there through Facebook, and that was.
Yeah, if you look at traffic, then at least for the sites that I know, but I've also seen it with other people, that people come into websites through other social media platforms. Yeah, and which is also a bit unclear though, actually, where it's going. Also with these URL shorteners, it's actually a total mess. You have there's no history, there's no.
But I mean, to qualify my earlier statement about breasts, you were saying if you were to make a work which featured boobs in it, and let's say you posted the link through the Facebook, you wouldn't be able to reach.
Oh, for sure, there's censorship on Facebook. Yeah,
exactly. But as an artist, are you concerned that even though you embrace this kind of method of delivering, let's say, eyeballs for your work, if you want to use such a crude term, your work is going to be kind of edited, as it were, curated by Facebook?
Yeah, that's sad. Yeah, there's not so much freedom of expression. I mean, you have it's an American company with a certain idea about what is appropriate, and I mean, you use the system, and you just have to play with their rules. If you don't like it, then you just don't use it. But the system just works to set it to certain satisfaction, and if I wouldn't use it, then well, Facebook is not going to beg to come back. So if you don't, well, actually they are begging when you leave when you leave the platform. You get all these emails back. Why are you leaving us? But as long as there's no better alternative, that's what I will use. Yeah.
But theoretically, as a programmer, you have, let's say, the toolkit to, try a little bit harder than the average internet user who doesn't have a certain skill set.
Sure, yeah. That's why I made my own system. But I mean, I would have no way have the capacity to make an alternative social media site. And I think there are some being developed right now that are less corporate. And so far, Facebook hasn't been troubling me. But I know if there would be certain political direct content in the work, or nudity, or I mean, I think you can't even have a photo of a naked child on Facebook, even if it's totally not pornographic, and that is very sad.
But you can post guns and everything else that are able to kill people. Yeah, that's the sad part. Yeah, I think we have to move away from this somehow, sooner or later. But it might take some time because it's a big technical problem and the internet is not there yet. It's not yet providing enough modularity and functionality that you can just recombine and to build your own structure. And the censorship problem is a big one. Also because it's social censorship in a way. It's like other people say that you might not be appropriate, and so you're somehow imprisoned within the realms of what the people outside of you think is normal. That's definitely not the cage you want to be in as an artist, because that's explicitly, I think, what artists should do, is break out of these cages, and then by hanging your pictures in a prison, it's probably not the best environment.
Quite an apt metaphor.
Yeah, maybe.
But I mean, in the case of your Blinken Lights project, where you invited, just general users, members of the public to contribute their content, I'm sure there weren't many kind of explicit sort of sexual or political statements on the building. I mean, were you involved? In that?
Do you know when we started Blinken Lights? I mean, what the first day was?
Tell me.
September 11, 2001.
Okay.
It's probably the worst date ever you could pick for releasing a new art.
It was not deliberate?
Sorry?
That was not deliberate, that date?
I hope not. I don't know. We were first. So we were sitting there. So I was really sitting there looking at the news, and I just thought, like, what the hell? Why are you doing this to me? This is really great and really produced, and nobody is just going to lift their heads because they're all looking down totally in front. And that's actually what happened. And for 2 weeks, nobody really wanted to take any notice of us. I mean, in the media, there's a building just opposite of Haus des Lehrers where they produce Berliner Zeitung. Not a single word for 2 weeks, although they were constantly looking at our building. Because it was just not apt to talk about something that might be funny or, I don't know. And of course the first movies we got, except from the Great Blinking Heart, which was the very first movie we got at all, which was then our logo for the installation. Of course there were lots of movies with funny planes flying into buildings. Sure. And then we were sitting there and said, like, okay, what shall we do with this? So now we were in the business of censoring our own installation somehow, which I always called curating when people were asking me for this, because it was somehow curating, because we needed to find the right stuff for this very particular moment in time, which was the most complicated moment in time that you could come up with, a building that's showing any possible picture to the public. So we didn't show the plain stuff because, first of all, they were bad. They were not really well made. But on the other hand, it was totally obvious that nobody would understand it. Nobody would get what the message would be.
Could you say that Facebook is also curating our walls?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, but it was just a decision for us. I mean, it's not that we made a promise to everybody to show their stuff on the internet, which is the building. Yeah, it was, in a way, it was still ours, although we wanted to make everybody participate. But even if you are coming up with a game or a play and you want to have people participate in it, you're definitely looking for those who really fit in and that make a good contribution to it. So that wasn't, that moment in time wasn't really the best contribution you could do to the projects, and there were a lot of others who did brilliant contributions to the project. We threw in the movies later on, a few months later, when it was fine, and people were, you know, sort of getting some distance to what happened, and then nobody really cared much about it anyway. But that's something you have to deal with. Yeah, that was another aspect, but I'm not remembering it right now.
Were you going to say something?
No, I was just thinking of that. Exactly the same argumentation could be given by social media platforms. They could say, well, we don't think that nudity is appropriate for this platform because people might take offense, so we're not allowing that. So the, you know what I mean? The rules of what can be in and what cannot are going to be subjective and decided on usually by not by, let's say, an ethical committee, but by developers, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think an anti-Islam movie after September 11, 2001, people would have considered to be totally okay. But if you would show it today, we have burning buildings on the large scale. So it's you're always somehow the victim of your time, and you have to deal with it. That's for sure. But that doesn't change the. You should be in control, and that's what we achieved somehow. We were in control of our platform. We were able to adapt. We were able to do the maximum what we what we wanted, and it was our dial to turn, and not somebody else's. And that's the important part here. Independence, in a way.
But Harm, you've recently started making more work that, as it were, looks like sculpture in offline space. Is there a reason you're kind of moving away from sort of purely digital content? And also I want to ask both of you, do you think it's necessary that artists today not just engage with social media in terms of uploading content to it, but let's say critique it through performance? You know, because I see a lot of that practice coming out, and how useful is that?
The first question is if I don't think I ever moved away from the internet. Just my range of possibilities for exhibitions have changed. I don't only make things online because I have always been able to do so, but there is also venues suddenly, which is great, and I'm not going to project something that is meant for the internet. I'm not going to project it in a space. I think that's lame and doesn't make sense. So the way of structuring my practice and seeing what, in an intuitive way, let's call it social media, these systems, how that can fuel the content of my work is a very internet-based thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, the second part of the question was following on from how this kind of online experience, the social media experience, can fuel the, as it were, the content of the work. I see a lot of artists today who, as it were, maybe appropriate data from sort of Facebook and Tumblr images, even whole personal profiles, take them as found objects and kind of, kind of perform with them, or let's say take a kind of cynical or caricature, create caricatures of that kind of social communication. I wonder if you guys think that is an interesting direction, or if you can outline perhaps some alternatives that are more intriguing.
Well, it's subject matter, it's a direction, it's something that people are interested in to make art with or about or in, which is totally fine with me. I'm thinking of Ryan Garten's videos or Lizzie Fitch sculptures or whatever. I mean, it's very related to internet aesthetics, but it's also going beyond that. I am researching in my work maybe more let's say the hierarchy in internet aesthetics, but also amateur aesthetics found on deviant arts in relation to high art, or if that still exists. So that is more my interest. Yeah. But is that an answer?
Sure.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm really trying to ask is, you know, is it enough to kind of replay with the volume turned up people's sort of performance or use of social media platforms? You know, kind of, let's say, Twitter posts, you know, Facebook, like blogging posts. Is that you know, is that something important, or have we moved on from that?
I'm sure it comes with the novelty of the medium that artists are triggered.